Welcome to, welcome to everyone to this webinar, Finding Your Workforce, the top 25 graduating institutions in STEM fields. This webinar is part of Excelencia in Education's ongoing efforts to serve our mission of accelerating Latino student success in higher education. Foundation and the Kresge Foundation has led a national initiative ensuring America's future by increasing Latino college completion. It has generated many informational tools and analysis both at the national and state level. As the effort to increase America's college-educated population has gone forward, increasingly, attention has turned to action, tactics, and strategies that will allow us to take full advantage of this country's most precious resource, our human resource. This series, entitled Finding Your Workforce, is intended to provide everyone with direct and simple, straightforward information to drive home the direct connection between efforts to increase the number of Americans who are able to secure a post-secondary degree and the benefit to them, to employers, to the economy, and thus to the country's future. As I said when we began, this is the third in a series which has been designed and built by Excelencia in Education's co-founder and Vice President for Policy and Research, Deborah Santiago. At this point, I look forward to hearing with you Deborah's presentation of the analysis, the reflection on what Excelencia in Education knows about promising practices and tactics to increase Latino participation in STEM, and the reflections by today's esteemed panel. I'd like to turn things over now to Deborah Santiago.
Thank you, Sarita. Just one moment, please. So thank you all for joining us. To get started, I want to share a little bit about finding your workforce and what we put together. So what you see in front of you is our screen. This is the title page of what we've got going on. And share a little bit of information about finding your workforce to hopefully stimulate a little bit of conversation and feedback from our panelists. So first, as Sarita mentioned, this is part of a series. This is the third in the series, focused on STEM. We hope to share with you all the same or similar information in business, education, and liberal arts. And that will be coming in the next few months. You'll be getting each one of these. Our goals, and again, Sarita shared some of these, is really to increase the awareness that more Latinos are graduating with degrees. And we need to make sure that we're linking that completion with our workforce. We want to encourage the workforce to do more to engage the Latino community. And we want to respond to those who are interested in recruiting Latinos but aren't sure where to find them. And this is based on conversations we've had over the past several months and years of our work at Excelencia in Education. So very simply, I want to lay out what we've seen in STEM from 2010 to 2020, so these next 8 years of information that's been collected in research, which basically shows that we need to increase the numbers of degrees conferred and professionals in STEM fields to remain competitive as a nation and to make sure we have an engaged citizenry. And some data show that we need to increase over 30% from what we currently have, our current STEM degree graduation numbers. When we look at the key occupational groups in STEM, we find that in order of ranking by projections, that computer and mathematics, architecture and engineering, and life, physical, and social sciences are ranked among the top occupational groups in STEM for occupations in the near future. We also know that Latinos are projected to be about 3/4 of the overall growth. They'll represent about 1/3 of the civilian workforce, but 75% of the growth in the labor force in the next 8 years. And that our focus is to ensure that more Latinos are completing degrees and certificates in STEM to help reach the national goal for college completion and attention to the STEM fields. Some of the key points that you'll find in our very simple piece here. Basically, Latinos earned about 8% of all certificates and degrees conferred in STEM for 2009-10. And I will say, you know, in doing this research, we pulled, at the time, the most recent college degrees conferred across academic levels, so from certificate of 1 year to 2, associate level, baccalaureate, master's, and PhD levels across the educational pipeline. And we also included for-profit as well as public and private not-for-profit institutions, because we really wanted to look at the absolute numbers of degrees conferred. So this kind of information we're sharing really does just look at the numbers of degrees conferred in 1 year. We think that is of value. This isn't information, and the institutions by academic level are not ranked by issues of quality or productivity. These are sheer numbers. But we think adding that to the dialogue about college completion, and certainly by discipline, adds a little bit of texture to the broader conversation about college completion. So in 1 year, Latinos earned about 8% of degrees conferred in STEM. And we also noticed in our analysis that the top institutions awarding degrees to Latinos in STEM were concentrated in a small number of institutions. So over 40% of Latinos earning a degree in STEM of the STEM fields were amongst the top 25 institutions awarding degrees to Latinos. Next, we also noticed that there's a concentration of Latino degree attainment geographically. And this is similar to other disciplines we've seen, and probably not a surprise to some of you, given the concentration of the population overall. And so 6 states in Puerto Rico were tended to be represented in the STEM fields. I should say, when we looked across the spectrum in STEM, there were about 26 states that had institutions amongst the top 25 by academic level. So we do see some broad scale, but the vast majority, if you take a look at the tables that accompany this publication, are really concentrated in these 6 states in Puerto Rico. And these include Arizona, California, Florida, Illinois, New Mexico, Texas as well. The last 2 points that we just want to make sure you think about is the focus of Latino degree attainment is at the baccalaureate level. So 60% of degrees conferred to Latinos in STEM were bachelor degrees. And that has implications as you think about the service occupations versus professional occupations in STEM fields. And when we looked at that, we noticed that looking at Bureau of Labor Statistics information, that Latinos that are working in STEM are concentrated in lower paying jobs, so that they're more likely to be in service occupations rather than high paying professional occupations. We have a little bit more detail about that. And we think it's interesting to note, we consider where Latinos currently are graduating and what we can be doing from a policy and program perspective to make sure more are graduating, not just at the important certificate, associate, bachelor level, but also that more are graduating at the graduate level. So just a couple of more key points, and all of this is available in the publication, that when we looked at representation of Latinos, we were much more likely to be concentrated or represented at the certificate levels. We were representing 24% of the population receiving certificates in STEM, as opposed to the total population at graduate levels, which is about 3 to 4%. We also noticed that when you looked at the aggregate across academic levels, so this is not just 25 institutions, but across each of the academic levels, the top 25 institutions awarded about almost half of all degrees to Latinos in STEM. The majority of the institutions were at the associate and baccalaureate level were Hispanic serving institutions and were predominantly public institutions. And then we looked at the doctoral level and noticed that all doctoral degrees to Latinos in STEM, the top 25 institutions awarded about 60% of those. So there's a high concentration of the Latinos earning degrees from a small number of institutions overall. We try to take a little bit more look, a little deeper into the workforce. And again, these are simple numbers. We do try to cite and source it, but to give you a little context. And we looked at the representation of Latinos in STEM. And we noticed that there was higher representation of Latinos in lower paying STEM service occupations like electrical, electronics and electromechanical assembling, telecommunication line installers, aircraft mechanics. Then we were likely to see Latinos in higher paying STEM professional occupations like architectural and engineering managers or computer and information systems managers. And this is, you know, the current workforce for 2011. And we were trying to map where they were with where they were getting their degrees. Again, we did pull out for STEM fields. We know it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In science, we looked at biological, biomedical sciences, physical science, and science technology. Those three disciplines we aggregated to define science. And then in technology, it was computer and information sciences, engineering, a little self-explanatory, and then mathematics, which was mathematics and statistics. And these are, again, just a reinforcement of the states that we had seen in terms of the ranking. The only ones that are a little bit different here than the ones you mentioned overall, Nevada is included in science technology. These were certificate or associate degrees. And then at the technology level, which is computer and information sciences, Massachusetts, is MIT, was among the top ranked at the doctoral level graduating Latinos in that field. Other than that, you see the same cast of locations graduating Latinos. In terms of the institutions at multiple levels, and by that we mean, are there institutions that are represented as a top institution at multiple academic levels? And here we had a couple of institutions that we thought it was worth noting for you all. And that is at the certificate and associate level, there were two institutions that were amongst the top, or were the top, among the top institutions awarding degrees to Latinos in 2009-10. South Texas College in two STEM areas, biological, biomedical sciences, and engineering. And then Instituto de Banco y Comercio in Puerto Rico, which was in computer and information technology, sciences, and engineering. At the baccalaureate and graduate level, there were two institutions in Puerto Rico that were represented more than once and in more than one discipline, and that was University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez and University of Puerto Rico Rio Piedras in their respective science fields. You know, a large part of the work that Excelencia is trying to do is not just show numbers. We're also trying to show what works as a way of trying to provide information to programs, departments, institutions that would like to know the kinds of efforts across the country that are evidence-based and serving Latinos amongst all the students they serve to increase their student success. And we just pulled a couple here. There are more in the publication that are focused on STEM fields and that have evidence of effectiveness in serving Latinos amongst the students they had. So we picked four. In one, college preparation, the Jaime Escalante math program at East Los Angeles Community College, which really focuses a great deal on college preparation in mathematics. And they have over 65% of their students that are participating are Latino. There's more information about evidence of effectiveness and others for each of these programs in our Growing What Works database. The website is below, but I want to just quickly capture some of the differences we see in college preparation, outreach, academic support, and retention and completion. In outreach, we looked at the diversity programs in engineering at Cornell University in New York. and Latinos represent about 20% of the participants. And there's a real focus there on the entire component of the education pipeline and higher education. And that's to engage at the undergraduate through faculty level for not just outreach, but also recruitment through completion for underrepresented groups. In academic support, there's the CASI program, Computer Alliance of Hispanic Serving Institutions, at the University of Texas, El Paso. And it's actually a consortium of multiple institutions housed or based at University of Texas, El Paso. And they have very concrete goals to serve students at their institutions, which have a high concentration of Latinos, in computer and information sciences. And they've got some very impressive evidence of effectiveness in serving these students. And last, we have the retention and completion focus. And one of the programs that we've honored and recognized through our examples of Excelencia is the Science Educational Enhancement Services at California State Polytechnic University. About 2/3 of the students they serve are Latino, and their real focus is creating a community, a supportive community within the institution that allows all of their students who are participating to help each other and get to completion. And I think that's, we've seen very effective practices here and others that we think other institutions can learn from. I think at this point, that's kind of a very quick overview. I apologize if it was a little too fast, but there's a lot of good information about Latinos in STEM that we wanted to make sure and share with you. And at this point, I'd like to pass it back to David to help us out with some of the potential questions, to just the panelists and the respondents to talk about this and their work overall as it relates to STEM.
If I may intervene, David, I'm going to remind our listeners that there is an opportunity for you to join this discussion. I would encourage you to think about questions that Deborah's presentation has generated, or if you've had a chance to visit our website, www.edexcelencia.org, and download the PDF of the brief, we encourage you to write your questions using the interface for this webinar. And David will be reading through these questions, because we know we have a lot of participants in this webinar, and we'll be preparing questions for Deborah, but also for our panel, which I now have the pleasure of introducing. I will do it one by one, and we are pleased that all of them have been able to join us today. Our first respondent is Anish Chopra, former Chief Technology Officer of the United States, and we are delighted that he has taken time to think about this brief, the growth of the Latino community, and the impact that it can have on STEM. Anish, I will turn things over to you for your perspectives and reactions to this brief.
Well, thank you very much. I really want to commend the organization on a terrific presentation. I thought to share a few observations on the importance of the report and how it relates to our broader national dialogue on ensuring that we have a workforce that's fully prepared to serve the jobs and industries of the future. Now, as quick background, this particular topic of STEM education and ensuring it's available for all, particularly a very fast-growing segment of our population, is that it aligns directly with President Obama's strategy for American innovation, a vision he outlined early in the administration to discuss how the country would achieve long-term economic growth. The President's strategy focused on three fundamental pillars. The first, that our nation is at its best when we invest in the building blocks of innovation, that when we set rules of the road, that we focus on those rules that can promote innovation and entrepreneurship, and for a handful of national challenge areas for the country, we need an all-hands-on-deck approach to catalyze breakthroughs, whether it be on healthcare or clean energy economy and the like. As mentioned in this webinar, our human capital is very much at the center of our investment focus when we describe the building blocks of innovation. In short, STEM matters. As you heard some of the statistics, I just thought I'd share a couple more. That the STEM jobs in particular, going back 10 years, grew 3 times faster than non-STEM jobs. And if we project it forward, those STEM jobs will grow by an additional 17% in the decade to come. STEM workers earn, on average, 26% more than their non-STEM worker counterparts. And as expected, STEM workers are highly educated. Less than 10% of all STEM workers today have stopped their training at high school or less. But as the point of this seminar and webinar is, too few of our students are pursuing STEM careers. This is why President Obama launched Educate to Innovate, a unique public-private partnership that tackles 3 very important topics in STEM. First, that we improve our STEM literacy so that all students can learn and think critically in science, math, engineering, and technology. Second, that we move the country from today's current middle-of-the-pack performance to the top of the pack over the next decade. And then finally, given today's topic, we expand STEM education and career opportunities for underrepresented groups, including our Latino population, which, as was mentioned earlier, will account for a disproportionate share of our worker population in the years to come. Just a few brief words on the initiatives the President launched, and then I look forward to hearing my colleague panelists to share their perspectives. First, in addition to the vision document the President outlined, he launched a private sector initiative, or challenged a group of CEOs to launch a private sector initiative called Change the Equation, an unprecedented gathering of over 100 CEOs whose mission is to scale up 5 of the most effective, proven best practices in encouraging STEM fields to now over 130 new communities that didn't have these programs and have already reached nearly 40,000 students. And as a matter of policy, the President has called for over 100,000 more STEM teachers by the end of the decade, and most recently launched an ambitious vision for a 10,000-member Master Teacher Corps. But I thought to share just one final observation to describe to you why this is so important. We in our country have hidden talent that is ready to break through and solve some of the biggest challenges of our day. Like a young man named Victor Garcia, whom I got to know because of his phenomenal work in addressing one of our biggest challenges, the manufacturing crisis, our challenge to get America making again. The military research and development arm, DARPA, issued a very unprecedented crowdsourcing challenge last year. It was called the Crowd-Derived Combat Support Vehicle Challenge, and its mission was pretty audacious. Can we, through new, more open models, reach out to the hidden talent in America to help us design and eventually prototype a brand new vehicle that our military could use in a non-combat mission? In this case, a vehicle that could help transport wounded soldiers from the battlefield. Victor was a Mexican immigrant at the age of 5 who waited tables at a Sizzler and saw a television ad that said, "You too can be an automotive designer," and eventually got a technical degree, a STEM degree. He was an entry-level worker at a trucking company when he found out about this particular challenge. And it didn't matter what his resume was. He had that hidden talent that we know exists in the country. And in less than 3 weeks, he put his heart and soul in developing the design that the military was looking for. And without any big, fancy government contractor background, he emerged as the nation's leader in developing that combat support vehicle. And months later, after the prototype was built, joined in the President's Advanced Manufacturing Partnership launch and had the opportunity to shake the President's hand first and foremost to demonstrate how the talent in our country, when given the chance, can make a big difference. This seminar, the webinar we've just described, just screams the opportunity that's before us as a country to ensure that the talented folks we have in all corners of the country can make a difference. Thank you so much for hearing my views. I look forward to answering any questions as they come up.
Thank you, Anish. Again, I want to remind everyone that we encourage your questions and ask that you write them on the webinar interface. and we will be fielding those questions at the end of the respondents. At this point, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Margaret Mannix, Executive Editor of U.S. News and World Report. In June of this year, U.S. News and World Report held a summit entitled STEM Solutions, where leaders in business, education, and government looked at the change agenda and deliberated on ideas and strategies. Clearly, U.S. News and World Report recognizes the importance of STEM and the country's future. Join me in welcoming Margaret to today's discussion about Latino graduates and STEM.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I too, like Anish, want to commend you on holding this webinar and your series of reports. I've only scanned the first two, but this one I've looked at a little bit more in depth, and I just, again, congratulate you on the depth and the comprehensiveness of this effort. The one thing that fascinated me about the report is that you did indeed shine a light on the successful programs, those that could be a model and could be scalable on a national, if not an international level. And we are particularly interested in that, of course, given our history in looking at you know, the rankings of high schools and colleges and grad schools. So I was very interested in reading about the model institutions and programs, in particularly the college prep ones, the outreach and the diversity. Also, especially for us, in getting information out to our readers, the parents and the people in higher ed, as well as would-be students. We're trying to get as much information out there as possible. So I was really interested to read about the program that offers a crucial academic support and also some sort of support for retention and completion, because as we all know, that is a hard thing, and you have definitely pointed that out in your report here. As to what we're doing and why we're so interested in STEM now, it came out of our one of our newest rankings. We, earlier this year, ranked the best high schools for STEM. And we got to talking to a lot of people, and we learned that there was an enormous number of groups and people out there so interested in STEM. Of course, like Anish said and you said, Deborah, there is a challenge out there. There's some jobs not being filled, and we need to get more students interested in that. And we have to get everyone together. So what we decided to do was get the business leaders, the policymakers, government executives, you know, human resources type, all together in one place down in Dallas to talk about what the challenges are and to try and come up with some outcomes. And we were very pleased. We've got a lot of support down there. We had a lot of people. We assembled what I thought was a very impressive cross-section of leading voices from the STEM education and workforce community. And it was a prime opportunity for people to learn from each other. And we had a lot of people pushing forward concrete solutions to address the challenge, and that we're hoping that we will be able to break new ground with our outcomes, which we're hoping to publish the next month or so, as well as we've already decided to do this again next year, somewhere in Texas, to be disclosed soon, I hope, but we are going to do this again. And we did learn that while we had 3 days of conferences and many panels and breakout sessions, and these zeroed in on various challenges in the STEM world, we looked at promising programs that could be scaled up. We looked at how to increase public awareness, how to reach a broader audience of the parents, the students, the teachers, and the workers. And we came at it with a very critical and objective mindset. And we all were under the consensus notion that there's a ton of good work underway right now, but not enough is being done. And we do know that we just, you know, we just hit the tip of the iceberg down there in Dallas, and there's a lot more work to do, a lot more people to talk to, a lot more public outreach to go on. And so, once again, your report will definitely help push us in the right direction in getting the word out there and getting more work to be done. And I have to say, as I listen to you, Deborah, I have a lot of questions myself, so I will have a lot more questions later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. And by all means, David's job is to filter the questions that will come from our listeners, but we want to use this opportunity to talk with each other as well. The synergy that we are already experiencing between Anish and Margaret and the the goals and purposes of Excelencia's focus on straightforward data about where in this country people are implementing solutions and Latinos are getting degrees, it is very much at the forefront of my thoughts in introducing the final panelist, Laird Kramer, founding director of the STEM Transformational Institute at Florida International University. Laird and I had a chance to meet as part of the work going forward with Ensuring America's Future, included a visit to Miami and a focus on the use of technology and its power in increasing educational opportunities for Latino students. And at that point, Laird was sharing their efforts at FIU to launch this center. FIU as a campus is known to Excelencia very well because of its consistent showing in terms of institutions in our country that propel great numbers of Latino students through their training and with graduate degrees and into the workforce. So with that, Laird, I'll turn things over to you as not only a thinker in STEM, an academic, but as a professional at one of the institutions that's in fact spoken about in the brief.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I'd like to also follow my co-panelists by congratulating everybody on a really nice report. As mentioned, I really think I should be exploring the role of universities addressing our STEM workforce needs. As we all know, the challenges are very large, but there's some really excellent opportunities buried inside here that we need to seize upon to address these challenges. As a scientist and a physicist, I'm really driven by solving complex problems. And I'm just really one of many, many dedicated scientists and education researchers trying to confront these challenges and implementing sustainable solutions for our systems. The report, I think, really provides some compelling evidence that we need to improve our educational practices kind of across the board, and that's the way to solve the problems. For example, if you look at the fact that many students are coming from a small number of institutions, these institutions are mostly public, concentrated in certain geographic areas. You can take that bit of information and combine it with the realization that there's this concentration in lower paying STEM jobs for a lot of these STEM professionals coming out of Latina backgrounds. If you combine these things, you see a really good opportunity to take this internet opportunity to strategically invest in these sites. And by doing that, we have some significant impact on the workforce, both in access for these students as well as in preparing them for the higher paying STEM jobs, because we know that the higher paying STEM jobs are coming out of the better degree programs. And I think the other piece is that we have to think about how we evidence that excellent work by disseminating this information across other institutions, including majority institutions as well, so that they can better support underrepresented groups, which further leverages the impact of this report and really all of our efforts together. Let me be a little bit bold and say that we really do know a lot about how to be effectively supporting students in the classroom. We really know the structure of the classes so that students can learn and actually understand the subject that we're trying to communicate to them. The current state of knowledge about how student education works is very remarkable. There's a gigantic amount of information out there. So what really one could also be thinking about is, as we need to do more to understand it more deeply, but if we take what we currently know, we could actually implement these strategies kind of comprehensively across institutions. And that's kind of what we've been doing at Florida International University for a while. And then the real challenge then becomes this: how do we make this implementation happen? And so that's actually kind of what I should mention a little bit about Florida International University and how we're developing and some strategies, but also implementing other strategies from other partners. The institution really has made some significant investments in STEM education, and it's embarking on really an expansion of these investments, given a very unique role as a top public urban research institution that's preparing future STEM professionals. That absolutely includes teachers. And really our dedication to STEM comes out of multiple projects that have been going on for many years, And my role has been kind of leading the education transformation in our physics program by reforming courses, looking at the program more holistically, changing the program, providing other kind of outside of classroom support for students as well, which is very vital. These efforts combined have led to about a 1,500% increase in the number of undergraduate physics majors over the past 20 years at FIU. And this is in a time when the institution has roughly doubled. So we clearly are doing something very good, and this has gained us a lot of attention and helped our students tremendously. What our approach has really been is requiring the students learn their science as a scientist, and then this actually allows them to own the knowledge in a way. This may be allowing students to actually own the knowledge in a way that becomes very deep and effective. So this physics test case or this physics experiment has kind of triggered a larger set of transformations at our institution. Combined, this really has led our institution to commit to the STEM education with their establishment of the STEM Transformation Institute that will essentially try to turn FIU into a living STEM learning laboratory about how education works. And really provide evidence on effective practices to support all students. The initiative and the Institute has been driven by our president, Mark Rosenberg, and is really supported across the institution by top administrators, faculty, students as well. And I get the honor to serve as the founding director of the Institute. And so really what we're taking, the stance of using FIU as a laboratory is critical given this complexities of education transformation. There's lots and lots of inertia in educational systems, and so we need to overcome that inertia by thinking about how we can leverage change at all opportunities. I really look at this report as a part of a larger partnership that we really need to work across boundaries with organizations like Excelencia, as well as foundations. Industry plays a critical role because obviously they're hiring our graduates, K-12 systems because they prepare our graduates, and other institutions of higher education. We really all play a critical role in solving complex challenges, and I think we need to replicate this partnership in how we have brought about this little panel together, because we look at very diverse viewpoints of the same problem, and we're all kind of coming at it in a different way, but we're working together to get to the final solution. I think the message here is that we really need to use this report and as evidence to drive our practices. It establishes some pathways for thinking about how to improve our STEM workforce, as well as our nation's economic health. Our colleges and universities are really the last link in the preparation of future STEM professionals. So it's really our responsibility to take the leadership role in this critical mission. It may be really hard, but these problems are certainly solvable, and by working across our institutions and other partners, we can certainly implement research evidence practices across the education spectrum. Thanks.
Thank you. And truly, I hope all of you, I think Laird's comments really captures the reaction to a spontaneous coming together of three leaders in STEM field, Anish Chopra, Margaret Mannix, and Laird Kramer. Your insightful remarks, the fact that you sit in different places and yet the synergy of optimism is clearly here in this discussion, and the recognition that we're all thinking big, but we also recognize that it requires tactics and strategies which have to be deployed. That is in fact what drives Excelencia in education. And Deborah, Santiago, in terms of the analysis that's here in this report and the quality of profiling it in a format that is immediately useful, hopefully to all of you who are on the webinar, but to everyone who will take it going forward. At this point, really the conversation begins to open up, and I will turn things over to David England to moderate both the questions that have come in from our listeners, but also perhaps, David, you want to take Margaret up on her desire to ask Deborah a question and see what kinds of questions might go back and forth among the panelists themselves. We look forward to hearing this part of the dialogue.
Absolutely, Sarita. Thank you very much. And to members of the audiences who have submitted questions, what I will do is I will read out your question, and then Deborah will will moderate the process of trying to get a response, but I think that given the discussion that we've had, it would be wonderful if we could hear our first question directly from Margaret Mannix, one of our panelists. So Margaret, if you want to come on and ask your question, we can kick off the discussion.
Okay, as I said with our aptly named summit, US Do STEM Solutions, I was very interested in what Deborah was saying about the workforce. You had said that one of the things you found in your report is that we need to encourage the workforce to do more. Do you have any examples you can cite of a company or an industry that is doing more that we could look to for some answers and some successful programs or models?
Thank you, Margaret. We didn't include those in this document, but we've been talking to those in industry about their interest in recruiting Latinos, and actually we work with other organizations that would probably give you better examples than we probably could, because I think our examples are more anecdotal, but good organizations like SACNAS and MICE and MESA and CASI, some of that, I know that they're all acronyms. We will have this information available to you. They work more directly with the corporations and others that are trying to recruit or that are interested in recruiting these students. And we work a lot more with the institutions that are trying to get there. In talking to some of the institutions, they've shared very basic information about workforce engagement, and that is going directly to the institutions where these students are graduating from to recruit them there, sometimes even before they have gotten their degree. But I don't have very quickly accessible examples that I can give you about a corporation.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Let's go to our first submitted question. This is from Laurel Espinoza from ABT Associates, and she asks, what do we know about enrollees and graduates in STEM at community colleges, and what do we know about Latino transfer students to four-year institutions? Is that data out there, and what does it look like?
Well, I can start answering this, and I don't know if my colleagues would want to make sure and pitch in. If so, after I finish, if you want to speak up. The question is about enrollees and by the way, hello, Laurel. Enrollees and graduates at the community college level. We do often find that Latinos specifically enrolled in STEM fields at the certificate and associate level are much more likely to be low-income, first-generation college goers. We don't have that information in this report, but we do have a profile that went beyond some of the content here that show us that's often the case. I think our challenge is showing how we can get these young people or those interested in STEM that start at certificate and associate level to transfer and move up to the baccalaureate and to the graduate level. I don't have good data on that information, Laurel, that is able to show kind of the building blocks of a pipeline that allows students to quickly get a certificate and be out in the workforce, but then come back and build on that to get an associate or baccalaureate and then a graduate level education. I'm not aware of data, unfortunately, that can tell us that story. I think part of our hope is that we could do a better job of scaffolding to make that happen so that we can get Latinos who are earning degrees at the lower academic levels, as valuable as that is in the short run, into the higher professions and academic levels to benefit the workforce. But unfortunately, we don't have data on that that's reliable yet. Any of my colleagues want to respond to that as well, from what you might know? Okay. And David, if you wouldn't mind continuing on.
Sure. The next question comes from Camila Sandoval, who is curious to know if there are specific colleges that focus on STEM for Latinos, and in particular, which colleges are more focused on STEM, whether it's private liberal arts colleges or public colleges. And I think the gist of the question is there a particular type of college that somebody considering a STEM focus would be more inclined to go to?
So thank you for the question. Again, if you don't mind, I'll respond, and my colleagues might there might be some other responses to this as well. From the analysis we did, and again, this publication is available on our website now for download. I don't think there's a specific characteristic from what we could glean with our data. We did see that the institutions that were at the top in degrees conferred to Latinos tend to be public institutions, and tended to be also at the associate and baccalaureate level Hispanic serving institutions, which are institutions that have a high concentration of Latino student enrollment. But and there were a couple of institutions, as we shared with you, that were represented on multiple academic levels. But I don't know of the kind of criteria for an institution that's more likely to be STEM focused than other institutions. Our colleagues have any comments on that? Okay. David?
Yeah, our next question comes from Jorge Ponce from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and he's the Director of Policy and Evaluation in the Office of Civil Rights. He notes that the White House announced recently the establishment of a White House initiative on educational excellence for African Americans. As you know, there's already the White House initiative on historically black colleges and universities, but he notes that Hispanics only have the White House initiative on educational excellence for Hispanics. The question is, do you think that the White House will issue an executive order to create a White House initiative on Hispanic serving institutions that can help in this area?
Okay. I guess I'll take a stab at that as well. I don't presume to know or speak for the administration or any other entity, but I know that there has been talk in the past of looking at a White House initiative on Hispanic serving institutions. I know there's also been a commitment, because in full disclosure, I was involved with the White House initiative, as was Sarita, years ago with the previous administration, that there is an inclusion of higher education in the current White House initiative on educational excellence for Hispanics. But I'm not aware personally of a discussion that's more than a discussion about a White House initiative on HSIs yet. But I don't know. I wouldn't count it out, and maybe good work by others who are interested and committed that can ensure that something like that happens.
Terrific. And Jamal Abdul-Alim from Diverse Issues Magazine asks a question for Laird. He wants to know, why invest in institutions that are doing well? Wouldn't it make more sense to invest in some of the institutions that don't show up on the list?
Being in the middle of one of the institutions that's doing well, I think that what we have seen is that we have lots of ideas of what we need to do. So I think that some of these institutions that have played a significant role have a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge about things and procedures and practices that need to be put into effect. And I think that's one pathway to think about it. I think that there are perhaps special institutions that I think the challenge with institutions that don't have the track record is a little tricky to build that without some investments. It might be some strategic ways to do that, but I can see, yeah.
And Laird, if I could add to that, a lot of our attention, as you see in the pieces, on promising practices at the department or the program level. What we see with some of these institutions is an interest in going to scale. So what I didn't bring a lot of attention to, but I think you'll notice when you look at the data, some of these institutions are only graduating, 5, 10 Hispanics, and are still in the top 25 of those graduating Latinos in STEM in a specific year. And I think there's something to be said about increasing scale at those that are working well and doing a good job, as well as replicating as opposed to scaling up promising practices and efforts at other institutions that have an interest in the potential to graduate more students in STEM.
And Paula Rowe has a question she just submitted that I think follows up very nicely to that. And she's interested from Laird in hearing 2 or 3 specific techniques or strategies that have migrated from FIU's physics program to other programs on campus or to other institutions.
So I think that one of the big things that we have been doing and very successfully in the physics department was what's called the Learning Assistant Program. And I should say very honestly that this came out of University of Colorado at Boulder. And other places have replicated it, but we have replicated it at a Hispanic Survey institution. A quick answer is that a learning assistant, the goal is really to think about how to change institutional practices as well as provide pathways for more teachers in STEM fields. So the idea is that top students get encouraged to apply. They participate in essentially an experiential program where they help their peers learn physics or mathematics or chemistry. And this actually kind of requires us to transform the way we teach the courses, because it's no good for those guys to be sitting in the back of the room writing down notes and putting them on the web. That's not very transformative educational practice. So these students have actually kind of taken ownership of helping their peers learn. They take actual strong advocacy to become the next generation leaders in education. Many of them, a percentage of them will go on and become teachers, and that's what we're seeing at FIU in physics. And then we also, our failures end up going to graduate school. So this is not necessarily a bad program in lots of ways. And it's also actually changing the way faculty are working with their students. And so it started in physics in 2008, and then it spread to mathematics, chemistry, biology, earth science, engineering, computer science, and at this point, last fall, we had about 121 learning assistants active at the institution. And it's actually been adopted by the institution pretty broadly. And what's kind of interesting for us is that we're now kind of helping other institutions develop their learning assistant program. So it came to us, but then we're helping transmit it and disseminate it as well.
Great, thank you, Laird. And there's actually a lot of interest from our webinar attendees in the success that FIU has had. And so I'm going to do a follow-up in that area. Alfredo Gonzalez wants to know what key components needed to be in place for the STEM transformation effort at FIU to garner faculty support to become a successful initiative, and how has that been sustained?
Like I said earlier, there's a lot of inertia in education. A lot of faculty, I mean, there's this old adage of those, everyone teaches as you were taught. So we're trying to change that, because if we don't change that, it just kind of perpetuates kind of forever. I think that it's kind of many levers is how we see it, and this is what the research is also proving as well. I think that one piece is that you're just talking to your colleague informally is actually an extremely powerful thing, saying here's what I've done in my classroom, and letting them know what they can also do and wanting to try it. Another side is our students. We want to point and look at their success. So an undergraduate student who has had learning assistants in their course or has been a learning assistant, they will actually go to faculty and say, I really think you should have LAs or learning assistants in your courses, and I learned so much from that physics course, but why can't you do this in chemistry or some other field? That's actually one of the most powerful ways, because it's faculty ultimately really deeply care about students. So this is another driving factor. Another piece is data. So we have data on how transformed classes, the students in transformed classes perform in comparison to students in traditional lecture courses. And so that's another kind of element that's used. So, and then there's other pieces. Part of it is kind of creating an environment that it's acceptable and good to be supporting of your students. And one of the ways we try to frame it for faculty is, look, I'm a scientist. I go to the lab all day, I do my lab thing, and then when I go to my classroom, am I still being a scientist? And so we should think about how faculty can be scientists in their classroom. I need to think about what my students are learning. If I change the way I teach, will they learn more or will they learn less? And then how do I kind of continue that kind of scientific cycle in my classroom? It makes me allows me, I mean, the personal reward I get is because it's trying to be a scientist all the time and not just when I'm in my lab.
Great, thanks, Laird. Mary Parker from the UHD Scholars Academy asks, she notes that a greater emphasis of STEM at the pre-college level is needed to capture the imagination of students. She's curious to know if there are substantive initiatives currently or in the near future that can incentivize STEM fields at the pre-college level, because of course pre-college is putting students on the road for STEM success in college and at the college level.
Is anyone in the panel
Is that one for me?
to that? Yes.
I mean, I can make a couple remarks and then maybe someone wants to follow up. I mean, I think that one thing we do at a university is we do prepare the next generation of teachers. So, you know, again, it comes back to teaching how you're taught. So we need to be changed in the way we're teaching our courses. We need to change. We know practices that work very well for teacher preparation, and that's integrating, you know, sciences to pedagogy. The content in the sciences with the pedagogy in a very kind of unified manner, and that when those students go off to school that they're going to teach in, they will end up becoming strong advocates for education, or really STEM, and that's one piece. Another piece is to continue working with them once they are in-service teachers through professional development, where, you know, teachers can do workshops and other ways they can actually do research. There's several programs, national programs that teachers in K-12 systems can actually do research, including research at, say, example, CERN, where they just discovered a Higgs particle. And so I think it's kind of a continual interaction. Teachers are a great investment because of their persistence in the classroom and their advocacy in the classroom and their deep caring about the students. And I think there's other ways that people have been doing lots and lots of outreach to K-12 systems as well that tries to can build the bonds between K-12 systems and universities and colleges.
I guess I would just add to that you know, there are a good number of community-based organizations as well as institutions like Laird's at FIU that are looking at college preparation and creating an interest. In this piece, we try to highlight a couple of programs in college preparation that we saw were evidence-based and had a positive influence by institutions reaching down and out to those in school districts nearby. I think we mentioned mathematics, but there are others as well. And I would encourage those of you who are interested in this and maybe other areas of college preparation to take a look at our Growing Works database, which captures a lot of promising evidence-based practices in reaching young people to expose them to and provide interest in the kinds of disciplines and areas of interest that matter in today's environment and that can resonate with their interest overall. The other is to look at other organizations, and I apologize for the short notice, but we have lots of acronyms, so the SACNAS and the MESA and the other organizations that are really not just focused on Latinos and other students at the collegiate level, but that are really partnering with communities across the country to increase awareness. And we're happy to connect you with those organizations. I think they're really much more the experts when it comes to efforts as it relates to STEM and outreach.
Wonderful. And I think we have time for one last question. And since this entire effort is about making the connection between higher education and the workforce, I think it's appropriate that we end on a workforce career-oriented question from Yvette Duarte, who notes that from a career services standpoint, it's extremely important to incorporate internship opportunities into STEM curricula in order to provide a pipeline to these occupations. And Yvette would like this message to be brought to the attention of America's CEOs that they need to identify talent early and work with career centers to formulate a recruitment plan that includes internships and eventually full-time opportunities. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I thought it would be a good discussion point to close out our conversation. So Deborah, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, I think, Margaret was doing a good job with what they were doing at U.S. News. So maybe you would want to comment on that?
I mean, in terms of internships?
The workforce and the connection and the importance of it. I don't know if you saw any of that in the day-long workshop you all put together.
We didn't really touch on that a lot, but we have written extensively about co-ops and internships. In fact, our current college book, our college guidebook that's been on the newsstands for probably 6-8 months right now, we did do an extensive chapter on co-ops and internships, and in particular relating to STEM. And it is, as your attendee said, it is definitely a way for the CEOs to identify talent, and that is a really important thing. As Anish said, there is a lot of hidden talent out there, and I think one way that you can identify it is to, offer the internships. And then we do it here at U.S. News. Some of our best hires have been interns. And so I know from personal experience that it is definitely a way to identify the talented individuals, and it's a very efficient way of recruiting also.
This is Anish. Maybe I could use this as an opportunity to educate folks on an initiative that the President launched literally for this summer called Summer Camp. The President earlier in the year announced that he wanted the private sector to sponsor 200,000+ internships for disadvantaged youth this summer. And the IT industry took up that challenge, and a group of tech companies formed a coalition and launched something called Summer Camp, spelled Q-A-M like Mom P, Summer Camp. And as we speak, hundreds of young people, all disadvantaged youth, a number of them Hispanic in origin, are entering the IT industry in the one segment that does not require you to have the equivalent of a PhD in physics or engineering. Quality assurance is the one element of an IT profession that is more accessible to folks. It's still in the STEM domain, but it's in the area software testing, quality assurance, where young folks that don't have more traditional science or math backgrounds. This is the T and the E of STEM, not the science and the math of STEM. And you can learn more about that at summercamp.org, spelled QA. And the blog posts are amazing. There's a Arlen Rosario just posted today about their experiences. All the young folks are posting their stories online. They're wonderful to read. Catherine Flores. So I don't presume their backgrounds, but I presume a number of the folks that are being served this summer represent a lot of what this webinar was all about.
Terrific. Well, this has been a terrific discussion, and I'm afraid we're coming to the end of our time. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have additional questions, please feel free to follow up with me after the call, and we'll try and get your questions answered. And now Deborah Santiago, our Vice President and co-founder of Excelencia in Education, will offer some closing thoughts.
Well, thank you all for participating and for some of the really good questions that I think even go beyond the work we've done here and to some of the good work by others that are probably listening in. We'd love to make sure that we're informing the conversations going on about the need to ensure our youth, our populations overall, but certainly Latinos are well educated and entering the workforce and are engaged citizens. And this is our attempt, a simple way, to make sure that we're looking at this population as an asset and seeing where we are graduating from and what more we can do. And I think we've just started what's probably a conversation going on with others, but in a more intentional way. I wanted to mention that, again, that we do have our Growing What Works database. We have programs and departments at institutions that you might want to learn a little bit more about. That's where you also see some level of expertise that can get some of your really good questions. And I wanted to note that we will have more in the series in the next couple of months, release that we hope will be of interest to you and continue this conversation about college completion and workforce links. And the last thing I want to make sure and share with you is that, Excelencia in Education is really focused on evidence-based practices that are making a difference for Latinos and other youth, rather than just focusing on the crisis and the deficit of what's going on. We think that those are the examples that we need to build off of. In October 2nd and 3rd, we are going to have some events in Washington, D.C. that celebrate and share these kinds of promising practices. October 2nd, we're going to have an event called Celebración de Excelencia, Celebration of Excelencia. And this is where we're honoring programs and departments at the associate, baccalaureate, and graduate level that have evidence of effectiveness of serving Latinos amongst all they serve. And it's just an opportunity to recognize the good work across the country that too often doesn't get the attention I think it deserves, or we think it deserves. And October 3rd, we really want to have, it's a workshop on accelerating Latino student success. We call it ALAS, which means wings in Spanish. And in that workshop, we try to roll up our sleeves and have people who are on the ground working with students and others share with each other what's been working, why, some of the challenges, and what more we can be doing and learning from each other to make sure we're serving our students well. So I encourage you, if you have an interest, to participate with us in those events. And once again, thank you for your interest in this part of the series and the work you all do. Thank you.